A family went on vacation, and while they were away, this huge swarm of bees found their patio chair on the back porch and decided it was the perfect place to build a new home. So when the family came back and started uncovering their patio furniture, they found this giant beehive on their chair. There were at least 50,000 bees here, and they'd built this entire hive in less than 10 days. So my first step was to gently give the bees some smoke so they'd move off the part of the comb I needed to remove first. Smoke is a beekeeper's main tool. It doesn't hurt the bees, it helps us move them around safely because bees will instinctively move away from smoke, just like we do. And this was such a beautiful colony. This colony was clearly working hard and had gathered or created everything they needed to survive. So I gently pulled on the first section of comb, and I let it break naturally in my hands. This piece was packed with developing baby bees. There was so much larvae, which are those little white curled up worms in their cells, and there were a ton of tiny eggs that looked like grains of rice. This first piece of comb was absolutely beautiful. I took a moment to really admire all of the work these bees had done. It always feels a little wrong to cut into such a perfect structure, especially one like this. But I needed to get everything into the frames of a standard beehive box so I could transport as much of this hive as possible. So I carefully cut down the comb, and I used rubber bands to secure each piece into frames of the new hive. Then I removed a piece of honeycomb from the chair, and I couldn't help myself. I tried some of these bees' honey, and it was absolutely delicious. It was warm from the heat of the hive and from the hot Texas sun, and it felt like such a special treat, and I was really grateful for it since I knew this removal was going to take me at least a few hours. But I saved the rest of the honey for the bees, of course, so that they would have food as soon as they got into their new hive. Then it was time to remove the next piece of comb from the chair, so I gave the bees a bit more smoke to gently clear them away again. When they moved, they revealed another beautiful piece of brood comb, again full of baby bees. This colony was growing really fast, which meant that they had a very strong queen, and I was really looking forward to finding her. I removed this second section of comb, which had even more brood than the first. During peak season, which was this time of year, the queen can lay up to 2,000 eggs per day. It's her only job, and she was clearly doing it very well. I cut this comb carefully too, placing it into the frames of the new hive, and I'm always amazed at just how organized bees are. They store their babies in the center of their nest where it's the warmest. Then they keep their pollen right next to the baby bees since that's what they eat. And they keep their honey on the edges not only for insulation, but also for easy access for all the worker bees. And it's not random, it's intentional, collaborative, and beautifully designed. Every bee knows its role, and the hive itself is structured to support the whole colony like one single living organism. And so I was down to the last full piece of comb to remove. This part is always bittersweet. This was such a beautifully constructed hive, full of food and healthy brood. And I could see there was even more brood on this piece, so of course I wanted to save as much of it as possible. But I was a little surprised that I hadn't seen the queen yet. From the moment I start a removal, I'm always searching for the queen. But she's rarely on the outer comb. She usually stays hidden deep in the warm, dark brood nest. So even after pulling out all of the comb from this hive, there were still a ton of bees all over the chair. So I began searching very carefully for the queen. And after about 5 minutes, I finally found her hiding on the back of the chair. And I think this is my favorite part of every removal. People always ask me how I find the queen, and I always tell them it just takes a lot of patience and practice. So now is your chance to practice finding the queen. She's the largest bee in the colony, with a longer body than the workers. She often has a dark spot on her thorax that really sets her apart, and she's almost always surrounded by her attendant bees who care for her constantly so she can focus on laying eggs. This queen was really beautiful. She was a soft orange color that I absolutely loved, and she was surrounded by her royal retinue. So I put her in a special beekeeping tool called a queen clip. I always add a rubber band around my clips for extra security so the queens can't slip out. Then I placed her carefully into the new hive with all of their saved comb. Now that I had the queen secured, it was time to get the rest of the bees to move into the new hive. So I started scooping them up with my hands, trying to get enough bees into the box so they'd begin to recognize it as their new hive. But at first, most of the bees were just trying to fly right back to the chair. So I tried again. Handful after handful of bees I scooped, but still, back to the chair they went. So I tried again. Handful after handful of bees, but still back to the chair they went. I just couldn't scoop the bees fast enough, or they just weren't interested in the new hive yet. So finally, I decided to pick up the entire chair and give it a strong shake over the new hive box. And while I was very careful to not crush bees, I actually missed the box a little, but I got the bees close enough that they could find their way in. Then I used a bit of smoke to gently guide the bees towards the entrance, and it worked. They started marching right inside. I waited until close to sundown for all the bees to settle into the new hive, and once they were in, I put the lid on the box, leaving the entrance open for any stragglers to find their way. Then I carefully loaded the bees into my truck for their ride home. By the time I got them back to my bee yard, a lot of bees were clustered on the outside of the hive, probably because they got too hot on the ride home. So I took the hive out of my truck and I set it in its new spot in my bee yard, and it was another great day of saving the bees.